Hey, how's it going? I'm Ron.
I'm Zach.
We're from Widetrack, and we're here again today on Influences, where we talk about things that have influenced our musical lives and such. So today, we are continuing our top 10, between us, top 5 lists of each decade. And last week, in the playlist, if you take a look here, you'll see that last week we started this off with the 70s. 70s are our favorite decade for music. And this week it was tough narrowing it down to which decade came second, but much to our surprise, actually, what do we choose?
We chose the 2000s.
We did? Oh yeah, we did. That's right. It was a tough decision, as you can see. So, the 2000s, we were really surprised to see how much great music came out in the millennial decade. So, why don't you kick it off here, Zach?
Don't mind if I do.
What's number 5 on your list?
Well, an album that came out right on the year 2000. White Pony, Deftones.
Deftones, White Pony. Wow. That's one. What a way to kick it off.
Personally, I consider myself to be a good kid in school for the most part. No one rat me out. So I enjoy songs that say stuff about not being a good kid, and I find Back to School, the opening track, alludes to a lot of that, which, much like the next entry on the list, it just clicks for some reason, even though it doesn't really click with any aspects of my life. I still enjoy it a lot. Of course, it is home to one of the best Deftones songs, Digital Bath. Digibath for short.
One of my favorite songs. That's a great song.
And the album all the way through is pretty consistently good. I was originally surprised, much like Soundgarden, how the genre of their music was vastly different from what I expected based off of like their sort of image and name, mostly name. I don't know, it just never really occurred to me, but listening to them, it's like everything sort of fits together, and it's like it's not a surprise like, oh, that contradicts itself. It's something that I found just getting into the band really is, it all works out perfectly with itself. Anyways.
Yeah, there's a song on there called Passenger that features Maynard Keenan from Tool singing on it as well. Yeah, that's a great album. That was the album that kind of made people say, wow, Deftones they're not just a new metal band, they have some depth to them. And they continued on with that reputation since then. So, great way to start it off. My number 5 pick would be Smashing Pumpkins' Machina, I believe is how it's pronounced. The Machines of God. Came out in 2000, produced by Flood. It's a really different album for Smashing Pumpkins. Wasn't quite so Lollapalooza-esque, grungy. Had a little bit more of a U2, Unforgettable Fire era production about it. I don't know, that album is just, I can't get enough of it. I just love it. And it was the last tour that they featured the original lineup on. I was lucky enough to see him on that tour, and the songs really just blew me away live. So yeah, that's my number 5.
Moving on to our number 4 spots, mine would have to be a Porcupine Tree album, Fear of a Blank Planet. Much like how, even though I'm a good good student in school. I find that songs talking about that, when done correctly, just really, I think they click with just about anyone. You don't even have to be in school, I don't think. I mean, it's just kind of a feeling that's not too hard to relate with, which the title track, opening track, Fear of a Blank Planet, really describes. The song is absolutely amazing. It features Gavin Harrison on drums and Stephen Wilson on vocals and guitar, and it's an absolutely great song. The rest of the album is absolutely great as well. I don't know how to say it. Anesthesize, maybe? I don't know. It's like a quarter of an hour long. It's an amazing masterpiece.
It features Alex Lifeson from Rush on guitar on that one.
And come on, I mean,
Good stuff.
that plus Gavin Harrison plus Stephen Wilson, you don't get much better than that, I don't think.
The other two guys, their names escape us. A bass player and a keyboard player. Richard, I believe, is the keyboard player. Really love the way that guy plays keyboards. He's very soundtracky, you know, uses a lot of really cool sounds, and isn't always so concerned with dazzling you with the finger work as much as just setting some
Atmosphere.
yeah, really cool atmosphere. Yeah, that was the album that got me into Porcupine Tree, and that song specifically, the lyrics are just wow, dark and disturbing, but great stuff. It's a great choice. My number 4 is by the band Tool. Their 2001 album, Ladder Alice.
Wait a minute, that's right. What you put down?
He tried to give me a hint. Ladder Alice, it's a masterpiece, I believe. I've been following Tool since their Undertow album came out in, I believe, 93 or 94. And they really caught my ear off the bat, and with each album, Tool has really surprised me with how much they evolved from album to album, and that's the true definition of progressive for me, personally speaking, is the band progresses. And so when Tool came out with Ladder Alice, it was a total game changer. They took it to a level no one expected. It's the perfect album. Not much I can really say about it beyond that.
And if you arrange it in some order based off of a mathematical equation, it enhances your experience.
Yeah, apparently.
Ride the spiral, dude.
Yeah. Keep going.
Spiraling out, man. All right. My number 3 pick is Rated R by Queens of the Stone Age. The first album to really get them a lot of popularity, I would say. Not that I would really know anything about that, but I'm a big fan of every one of the Queens of the Stone Age albums, and I think their debut album's great, but their 2000 release, Rated R, is a favorite when it comes to albums, because you know, you think of album and you think of it kind of escapes you. Maybe you think of the album cover and the band. You usually jump right to the songs in the album, like some of my favorite songs are off that album. Like, I really love how those 3 songs are strung together. What else is on the album? That happens a lot. I'm guilty of it too, but I find with Rated R, it's like amazing all the way through. Even, you know, some of the lesser songs, they aren't bad. It's a Queens of the Stone Age song, as, you know, I'd like to say. It's like, okay, it's not as good, it's still pretty good though. But anyways, I think it's one of the defining albums, rock albums to me, because it's not like put good songs at the beginning and just let it all fall apart. It's strong all the way through, amazing songs all the way through. It's an absolute joy to listen to from cover to cover. It's great. Great album.
Yeah, that's the album that got me into him as well.
I mean, songs like Better Living Through Chemistry, Leg of Lamb.
That song. That's the song. That,
I Think I Lost My Headache.
Great stuff. Yep, I'll never forget when I first heard Better Living Through Chemistry. It was like I got shot with a stun gun. I was just blown away. And then I'm like, yeah, I love these guys. All right. Well, I'm making a little adjustment here. My number 3 one is a Queens of the Stone Age album as well, called Era Vulgaris. Came out in 2007. It was rated R, and then Songs for the Deaf, which is the big Queens of the Stone Age album with Dave Grohl on it that everyone loves.
Oh yeah, very desert rocky. Yeah, yeah.
And then Era Vulgaris. And when they put out Era Vulgaris, I'm sorry, there was one more in there called Lullabies to Paralyze.
The album synonymous for being forgotten. However, it is still very, very dear to us, considering it's dark.
I go between Lullabies to Paralyze and Era Vulgaris for my favorite. Thing I like about those albums, I love all of them, just like Zach. But I think I prefer it when Josh Homme is the only singer. And on the earlier albums, he doesn't sing on every song. A couple of the other guys would sing, and which is fine. But Era Vulgaris for me was when I became more than just a really good fan to a diehard, where it was just, wow, these guys can. It just seems to be the common denominator with a lot of the stuff is it's progressive. They continue to surprise you and take chances and
I think
expand.
With their newest album, Villains, it's completely different from all their other ones. And honest to us, when originally listening to it, didn't live up to our expectations as much as we would have liked. Not to say that the album's bad, but we thought for a Queens of the Stone Age album, it just didn't live up to our expectations. Frankly, at all, I'd say. I mean, there are good moments, good songs.
But you got to give it up, but all the same.
You do have to give it up that they were completely honest about their album. They said, this is what we're feeling. It's different from the last album.
Yep.
Each album's going to be different. If we just make clones of ourselves, what are we doing anyways? It's going to be the same stuff anyways.
Which makes us really anxious for the next one.
Yeah.
It's like I'll keep following somebody.
Okay.
If you don't like something they do, it's like,
if they're a band that
they're
keeps,
being honest.
Yeah. If they're a band that continually changes, then
that's great.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter when that type of stuff happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of when Chris Cornell put out an album, a solo album called Scream, produced by Timbaland, and all Chris Cornell's fans were up in arms. Oh my God, what are you doing? And he said, if people don't like this, I'll just make another album. And he did. He made a few more albums, and that were great. And that's the thing. An artist should always follow their instincts, and that's why we love guys like Josh Homme and Steven Wilson. And okay, so who's your number 2?
My number 2 is going to be, this is hard, Octahedron by the Mars Volta. Absolutely amazing album. Their whole band's history is just astounding. You start off with, their first couple albums, and John Theodore is playing drums on them. They're very energetic, but they're also still, like song-based. Like it balances out being musicianshipy and being, enjoyable to listen to, and just wow, that's so cool. After John Theodore left the band, or even a little bit before that, they had a couple albums that kind of went into more musicianship than song-based, and tough listens.
Really
for us.
self-indulgent,
Yeah.
really out there. Again, another example of, but you still follow them because they're being
They're
so
doing
honest.
what they want to do. They're not doing something just because the fans told us
And they
to.
always have those little moments that
yeah.
make you go, this is why I will sit through an album, stuff I mostly don't get, for this little gem here, because this is the only place you can get this little gem here.
But I feel that Octahedron was the moment where they said, all right, we did that for 2 albums. We're going to go more song-based because,
And acoustic-based.
their first couple albums are in the middle, lean towards one side. This is where it leaned towards the other side. And where I think that it was really their best, or if not their best, then equal to, on par with whatever their best is. Not only, but is it like more song-based, softer-based, it's atmospheric, it's acoustic even. And it houses some of my favorite songs in the entire world. Like, if you start from the beginning of the album, it's absolutely just gorgeous to listen to. You start off with, the name escapes me.
Since We've Been Wrong.
You start off with Since We've Been Wrong. It goes on Teflon, Halo of Nebutols, with Twilight as my guide, and
Wow. Yeah.
a little bit later it goes into Copernicus.
Oh, God. What an album.
It's
That's a great album, man.
It's very great. One of my favorite things about it is you listen to it and it's like, it's difficult to see how these songs were made because with only one part of them, it's remarkable. It's like, how did that come into existence? It's all very atmospheric based and it's all reliant on one another, and I think Cedric's vocals are the best on any album, on that album, by a considerable amount. It's inhuman what he does. But my second favorite album of the 2000s, without a doubt,
I love it too.
was Octahedron. Now,
My second, this was tough, but I am choosing Radiohead's Amnesiac. This album for me was, when it came out in 2001, Radiohead really started breaking through with tons of critical acclaim back in '96, I believe, with OK Computer. And I remember buying OK Computer and then the next album, which was Kid A, and I couldn't get them. This was still coming out of the 90s, and Radiohead was ahead of the curve, and I wasn't really getting where they were coming from. And but I kept hearing Radiohead. I said, this has just got to be me, but I'll give them one more chance, and if I don't get this album, then I'm just not a Radiohead fan, apparently. And I got Amnesiac, and it grabbed me right off the bat. And I was like, oh, okay. And that album, I was consumed with it. I would listen to it at work every day. Then I started going backward and buying the older Radiohead albums, listening to them again. Okay. Now I'm a big fan, and I owe it all to Amnesiac. And still to this day, that album has stood. It still stands up. It still sounds fresh. The thing I really find interesting about Radiohead is a lot of their songs are just kind of one riff based. One groove, one riff, and they just keep changing the vocal melodies and the atmosphere around one
and because of
constant riff.
How they're like atmospheric wizards, they can make a song sound just entirely different from, beginning, middle to end, even when it's all based off of the same riff,
Yeah, that's my number 2, Radiohead, Amnesiac.
My number 1 is also a Radiohead album. The album right after Amnesiac was, I believe, Hail to the Thief. And it's a good album. I think 225 is one of their best songs ever. It's just cool sounding. It's dark, but I digress. The album right after that, In Rainbows, is one of their best albums, I believe.
We had to share
to,
with
like,
Radiohead because that was going to be mine as well, and so yeah, that album, it's a perfect album.
The album is, when I mentioned with Rated R that it's, you know, a definitive album for starting at the beginning and going all the way through for an enjoyable experience, In Rainbows takes the cake. It is consistently a just marvelous album. It's not the same feel over and over again. Each song is different from one another. If you find a song on there that you don't like, I would be surprised. It's absolutely amazing, from 15 Step to Jigsaw falling into place to Videotape. It's absolutely amazing. One of my favorite songs since I was a wee lad was Weird Fishes. I remember, I have a very distinct memory. I said, man, I really like that song. And he said, okay, well, let's just see. And it was a little bit after I had been listening to the song a couple times, but my dad went upstairs to do something, and he said, if you're still listening to the song on repeat by the time I come back down, then I'll be surprised. And of course, not only was I like, easy, I love that song, and did you just challenge me? You know, it was a mixture of those two things, but I listened to the song on repeat for about half an hour-ish, 20 minutes. Good length of time.
He had a little dance to it too. It was pretty cool.
But I digress. It's a beautiful album. It has some of the coolest songs to me in the world. Check it out. It's a must listen for any alternative fans, any Radiohead fans, of course.
That was the first album that a major band came out and pretty much said, pay what you want for it. And it revolutionized the music industry to a degree. And I remember when I got it, I didn't get it at first. It was another one of those Radiohead albums that was ahead of the curve, and I said, well, man, this is no Amnesiac. And then when it clicked with me completely in a major way, and it surpassed Amnesiac.
Was it from In the Basement?
Yeah, seeing their episode of In the Basement, watching them perform in the studio, all the tracks from it blew me away. They're one of those bands, in our opinion, that all of the rave reviews are justified. A band like this only comes along every once in a blue moon. They're so far ahead of everybody else.
Something I do have to mention is check and see if any of your favorite bands have done I believe it's From the Basement or In the Basement or something like that. It's
great
like,
show.
It's absolutely just mind-boggling to see. It's like live performing, but in a studio with all this amazing stuff, and you have one of two thoughts, maybe both at the same time. One of them is, whoa, these songs are so cool when you see them performed, and the other thought is, ooh, I want that.
Yeah. Okay, my number one is Mars Volta album, Deloused in the Comatorium, their debut album. That to me is the best album of the 2000s. It's produced by Rick Rubin, the only album that the Mars Volta did that they had an outside producer. I personally think they benefited greatly from it. They were extremely frustrated with being produced, and they subsequently went on to produce themselves, or Omar Rodriguez, the guitar player, produced the band from that point. But that is the album that just changed things for me as a musician. And when it came out in 2003, I realized, like, wow, this is this is a huge piece of the puzzle in terms of what's possible, in terms of the direction that I'm trying to write in. And I'm hugely influenced by that album. And being influenced by it in terms of things that I realize that don't suit me so well, that I appreciate all the same, but, well, stay away from that. These guys can get away with that, but not you so much, I would say to myself, listening to it. And these are all discoveries you make when you're being influenced by things. So, but all that aside, I think that is just, that album will never get old for me. I can listen to it beginning to end and just sit there with my jaw on the floor every time. So, you got anything to say about that one?
What's he doing? I'm not going to specify because that's just about all you need to know is
Yeah.
what are they doing?
What are you doing? That's brilliant. I love you. Have my babies. Sorry. Anyhow,
To conclude.
To conclude, we each have our honorable mention. And
My honorable mention is 10,000 Days because, dude, it's Tool.
Yeah.
I have a poster of them on my wall next to... anyways, it's Tool, and it's... Each album is completely different, so I don't even feel bad, even though another Tool title was previously mentioned on this list. It's absolutely amazing, 10,000 Days. The song Judith was released by A Perfect Circle, and that, along with a couple others that people say, oh, it's about his mom, were songs that were released by Maynard kind of, as a result of the experience that he's had with his mother. However, Good Gravy, Holy Smokes, the entire album of 10,000 Days is centered around the song Wings for Marie and 10,000 Days, so songs, I guess. And they are both about Maynard's mother and his experience with her, and they are absolutely amazing. Works of art, the entire album is a masterpiece. Although, despite all that, no room on the list. Too many A pluses. I feel evil too. Don't worry.
yeah, that's the most recent Tool album that's been released, and it was in 2006. So we're really looking forward to the new one, and because of the quality of Tool's work, we personally feel like, what?
Take as long as you need.
Whatever you need to do to come out with that. If it takes 10 years, okay. We're lucky to be alive at this point in history when that band is putting out that music. So, Godspeed to Tool.
Kind of like Mozart, only
Yeah, of metal and progressive metal rock.
What?
So, my honorable mention is a Porcupine Tree album called In Absentia. It's the first album they had with Gavin Harrison on drums, and I'm not a big fan of their previous work up to that point. That's when they just began firing on all cylinders, and that album's great. It's just so atmospheric and cool and dark and moody.
A big key with a lot of the albums that we like is they've got to be atmospheric and they got to be dark.
Mm-hmm.
At least in
Something
one
about
way or
the
another.
melancholic and that atmospheric quality.
That's why bands like Pink Floyd and Queens of the Stone Age are so cool to us. It's
Mars Volta, and
Evil.
Tool, and Porcupine Tree. These bands are all they really hit the mark. So it's wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Anyhow, till we get till next week, we'll try to be a little bit briefer
Yeah.
next week. Appreciate you watching, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. And if you'd like to subscribe to our newsletter and be kept up to date with the stuff we got going on, we're getting ready to put a new album out, so we're really excited about that, and we're going to be playing some dates and a lot of that stuff. So we are
Also,
at www.widetrackmusic.com. So anyhow,
another thing to add, we have all the albums in a playlist on Spotify,
yes.
and we will be listing all of them in the description. Some albums, like the albums from Tool and Fear of a Blank Planet, which goes on and off of Spotify, we could not, put on a Spotify album, so we made do.
Yep, all of these albums will be in a playlist on Spotify. So, anyhow, until next time, keep on rocking.